everyone is excited to watch Caitlin Clark. That continues even after the Olympic break. She was off for right at a month after not playing and participating for Team USA. She returned on August 17th, or 16th, excuse me, on ION. They had over 1 million viewers across the country watching ION collectively whenever the Indiana Fever tipped back off on that Friday. And this past Sunday, 2.2 million viewers. I think it's the fourth largest audience for the WNBA. The national primetime slot on CBS this past Sunday. More massive ratings for the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark. And now we begin to see the transition into football season, where this weekend college football kicks off, and then we're 2 weeks away from the NFL season openers. Thursday night football will not play a factor, but Friday night will. That'll be the first head-to-head game. I believe it's September the 6th. And that is Green Bay against Philadelphia in Brazil on Peacock. Friday night, NFL football, week 1. And the Indiana Fever will also be on. You can bet that it will be a nationally televised game. And we'll be able to compare. We're going to be able to compare it 4 different times throughout the end of the regular season for the WNBA. Playoff time, that's where they got it wrong last year. They went head-to-head with the NFL on Sunday afternoon for the WNBA Finals. They've got to rethink the structure and the schedule of the WNBA Finals, regardless of who's playing in it. Doesn't have to be Caitlin Clark. But the head-to-head against the NFL for Clark will be fascinating to see, given the fact that every time that we see a headline with her name in it, it includes over 1 million viewers, even if it's an ION broadcast.
It's amazing that we're even discussing, not that it's going to be close, but that we're even discussing the NFL and the WNBA as somewhat of a competitor, or the WNBA needing to schedule better to avoid the NFL because they've got really good numbers right now and they don't want to take away from those numbers. The fact that that's even a question right now, and again, I'm not questioning who's going to have more viewers. It's going to be the NFL. But the fact that we're talking about strategically placing WNBA games away from the NFL is such a testament to Caitlin Clark. Hutton, she is such a phenomenon. I'm trying to think about the comparison that would be apples to apples of bringing someone to an entire sport or league based on one individual player. Tiger Woods comes to mind in golf and what he did for golf ratings in a tournament that he was in versus tournaments he wasn't in for years and years, the impact, the Tiger Woods effect of that. That's one of them. The other one's Lance Armstrong in cycling. I mean, people actually watch the Tour de France. Sorry for all the Frenchmen that are watching the show right now.
Chad, in terms of just attending an event, messy for me with MLS.
Yeah.
But I'm not watching on a nightly basis.
I don't know what the Apple TV Plus viewership's like for MLS with that package.
It drew me to go to the game.
Right.
But it didn't have me tuned in. It would be Tiger. That's the equivalent for me.
She is the biggest.
Just the single individual as to why you're watching.
She is the biggest needle mover phenomenon to ever hit that sport.
Oh, easily.
And there's not a close second.
No. And it will continue. Now,
and
right
that'll upset people who will say, well, she's not the best. Well, of course she's not the best yet. But good Lord, she's breaking records left and right in her rookie year.
Yeah.
And she's going to eventually be the best. That's the track she's on right now.
And now the question is, how do you capitalize on that? Because whether or not you were tuned in to watch Tiger Woods, you still saw Tiger go head-to-head with Sergio.
Yep.
Phil Mickelson, Ernie Els. Like, if you go back to that time frame, there were other individuals that you were also following. I don't think the WNBA is capitalizing on that aspect enough right now. Case in point is, and I wouldn't have known this had we not seen the complaints from the Connecticut Sun fans, or excuse me, the players, because the fans showed up. They played their first game last night in Boston at TD Garden. Of course, it's the Connecticut Sun, but they're wanting to be more of the New England team for the WNBA. And I think it's a great example of how fans are going to the games, flocking to it. In fact, over 19,000, they sold out the TD Garden in a game that had been planned for a while. And they're trying to get that NBA feel to it. It's Boston taking on Los Angeles and the Sparks. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. game's not nationally televised. You couldn't find it. You either had to go to the WNBA League Pass, which maybe Chad can find. I certainly can. And
didn't know there was such a thing.
Or
you just really educated me, Hutton. There's a WNBA League Pass?
There's a WNBA League Pass, or you could find it through the Connecticut Sun live stream.
Oh, I'll get that info from Tyler in the break. I'm sure he's knowledgeable of all these things.
Yes.
Big fan. Big Sun fan.
Dejanay Carrington is one of the outspoken players for the Sun and said, since we got to do our own promo, because she was critical that the WNBA has not promotionally done a very good job with this. We're playing at TD Garden tonight. It's sold out. First W game here ever, historic. Not on TV, but you can catch it right here on Twitter. I don't think college basketball and the NCAA capitalized on Caitlin Clark enough, because I can't tell you another player on Iowa's roster. Hopefully, you'll get you get more of the drama that includes Caitlin Clark in the playoffs for this league. But they've got to do a better job of emphasizing why I should care about literally anything else when someone refers to the WNBA as the W. And this is a great example of that. The Connecticut Sun, they share a training facility, their training facility, at a community center. The Mohegan Sun and the Mohegan Tribe, they own the Connecticut Sun. And they also own this community center. The Mohegan Tribe, they split this. Members of the community center have access to anything they want, first priority. So last week, there were members of the Connecticut Sun practicing. They had to put a divider up on their court, like at a rec center at a campus, and get out of the way for a Pilates class that was coming in while they were blaring music for Pilates, because the tribe members were there to work out. Sorry, WNBA. Meanwhile, this same franchise just sold out TD Garden, but no one would know about it because they weren't playing the Indiana Fever. That's the league's issue now, more so than 1.2 million, 2.2 million. All that's great. I want to see the numbers grow from the other matchups that are going to be on the court. And that's the real testament to what the league will be doing, not Caitlin Clark. I don't think they're even anywhere close to doing it the right way yet, because for all of the great facilities that I know Las Vegas has with the Aces, Phoenix Mercury, they have their own practice facility. I believe Los Angeles, if they don't, they share a facility with an NBA franchise, and some do. There's only 12 WNBA franchises. And I just mentioned one that's sharing one, the Mohegan Sun and the Mohegan Tribe, for a Pilates class. But yet they don't. Here's the photo of it. Behind that divider is a Pilates class going on for the Connecticut Sun, who just sold out TD Garden. There they are practicing.
Yeah, our high school teams had better accommodations.
It looks like Middle Tennessee State University's recreation center to me.
Yeah.
And, again, like
looks like two fraternities are about to play in a Tuesday night rec game at a university.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. ATO's taking on Sigma Nu there. But Chad, you
go SNU.
It is imperative that they do more to promote their league and individual players, much like the PGA Tour got it right whenever Tiger was on his tear. He was dominant, but they still built up individual brands left and right. And I don't think the WNBA is doing that.
Well, and it's got to be more than just Angel Reese.
The only way to do it is to talk trash about Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
That's the only way you get mentioned. Yeah, but yes. And not even the greatest players in the league. Some have, some haven't. But you see what I'm saying? If you don't cut the WWE promo, you're not really going to build your individual brand whatsoever. And that's on the league.
It is. It's imperative on them to not just have, and Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese is awesome. That's good for the league, but it can't be solely reliant on the times those two teams play each other. You've got an opportunity to branch out and do more. I'm totally with you. You can't look this cheap. You can't be this low rent.
Yes.
With the situation like this,
and we know what's
fully take advantage.
And we know what's going on here. They would love to relocate this franchise out of this 20,000 residential area of Connecticut, wherever they're playing, to Boston. They'd love to be able to do that. That last night, 19,126 in attendance. The Boston Celtics came. Members of the Celtics were there in attendance. I mean, again, they had a block party before tip-off on a Tuesday night. Fans are eager to support more than just Caitlin Clark if you allow them to. And, again, you had to go to find out. You had to know that there was a WNBA League Pass. And it's not even on ESPN. I'm not talking about just national broadcast. This is not on NBA TV. It's not on ION. It's just out there in the ether. It's bizarre how they treat certain games.
It's not even on OutKick.com. It's not anywhere.
Anywhere.
Any platform, digital. It's WNBA League Pass only.
So
we should work on getting some rights to these WNBA games. If no one else will air them, we could put them on our website.
We can't even get credentialed right now.
Put them on our website. That's true. That would be tough.
Have we continued
It would
that?
also be tough, by the way.
Has Dan Z continued to?
I don't know. We should ask. We need to get Dan Z back on the program and see if he's still being denied credentials across the WNBA.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll put it to you this way, Hutton. You brought up Messi. Messi comes to Nashville. We want to go see Messi. So we went and watched Messi play. And it's a memory because you got to see one of the legends. Caitlin Clark is 22, 23 years old and already a legend. If Caitlin Clark was playing at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, I'd want to go watch it.
Right.
I'd want to be in the arena when it happened, and it would probably sell out or close to it if they played a game here. And I mean, you could take this show on the road to other places.
And I think that's a good example to use Nashville because I think the WNBA wants to expand their league. They've got 12 teams. They've got to grow. Good example is last night, playing their first WNBA game in Boston. But if they want to come to a market size like Nashville, which is a prime example, you got to be able to push the product more than just with one player. And they're going to have their opportunity. I think right now, I think Indiana's in the playoffs, 7 seed currently. And that was updated yesterday. So, yeah, I mean, good. They want Caitlin Clark in the postseason.
They are 7th overall.
How do they grow? How do they grow it after Indiana's eliminated from the postseason? I don't think they've capitalized on it. I don't think college basketball did either. I mean, they'll be able to prove me wrong on that, but I don't think there's this massive draw now to the sport of women's basketball unless Caitlin Clark's on the screen. Even though we've seen higher ratings, but that still doesn't mean
she's elevated the ratings across the board, but. Not to astronomical numbers the way she has, games she's participating in, which is understandable. You look at the schedule also, and you brought this up, but if you're going to end in the middle of football season,
yes,
you almost have to abide by a Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday schedule.
Have to.
For your big games.
And really Tuesday, Wednesday now.
Yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and then take the weekends off. And come back and play the games again when football's not happening.
They went head-to-head.
If you want any eyeballs at all, because if Caitlin Clark is in I guess they're in the Eastern Conference Finals or the Eastern Conference, don't really know how it works. But if they're in the semifinals of the tournament, right?
Which is one series in.
If they're playing on a Tuesday night on ESPN, I'd watch.
Sure.
I'd check out some of it with no football on. Now, if you tell me it's that or whatever the prime video Thursday night game is, for the NFL, I'm probably watching football over that. Every single time. Saturday, I'm definitely watching college football. Sunday, definitely watch the NFL.
Right. And keep in mind, last year, the WNBA Finals went head-to-head with the NFL twice on Sunday. That just can't happen. They've got to do better with the overall outlook for what they're trying to do. And it's got to be more than just, we're setting records with Caitlin Clark on the screen. They can be much more received, recognized, whatever you want to call it. In the local markets, they're getting the support. But I don't think that translates into their overall rating the way that one individual player does. Everyone knows the Indiana Fever. I don't think can the average Indiana Fever fan, meaning Caitlin Clark fan, the new fan, name all 12 franchises in the WNBA?
No.
I agree.
Absolutely not.
And I don't necessarily blame you because that's not on you.
There's no way that's going to happen.
Unless you know where Ion is.
Big fan of Matlock reruns. Then you probably can find it.
Chad, we're a big fan of college football kicking off and, trying to figure out, prognosticating what's going to be correct and where we're going to get it massively wrong. Because history will tell us we're going to get about 50% of the predictions right when it comes to postseason play 4 months from now.
Well, on Friday, we're going to unveil our playoff predictions, conference champions, a lot of different things with college football here on the show. I'm not necessarily predicting this to happen, but I can tell you what's going to happen because it happens every year in college football. There's going to be a team or two right now in the AP top 10 preseason that ends the season unranked or low 20s that has, for their expectations, a disastrous season for any number of reasons. There's also going to be a couple teams outside of the current top 10 that are going to find themselves in the top 10 and in the playoff at season's end. So while I'm not making this prediction, Hutton, I'm going to give you a couple teams on each end of this to watch, okay? And you tell me what you think about this. I'm going to start with a serious wild card here. And let's start with the good side of this. Two teams I think could make noise that aren't predicted to do much of anything right now. How about the Nebraska Cornhuskers? I know, you're laughing.
Just name Raiola.
Nebraska's dead. You know, they haven't been around. They've been relevant in so long. Nebraska, Hutton, 5-7 a year ago. 5 of those 7 losses, having an allergic reaction over here, similar to yours the other day right now. 5 of the 7 losses by 1 score. They finished with the top 10 defense, and they returned 7 starters on that defense. Okay, Dylan Raiola, Hutton mentioned it, named the starter at quarterback. No surprise there. So we knew that was going to happen at some point, and in fact, it is the case. That is a 5-star guy, big-time talent. But here's where it gets really, really interesting for the Huskers.
Looks like Tua there.
Yeah, he does. There looks a bit like Pat Mahomes with a number 15 and kind of the chest out way he's throwing. Kind of reminds me of a Mahomes throw on that one. Here's where it's going to get easy for the Nebraska. It's their schedule. It's dog shit. I mean, this is a Power 5 schedule that I'm about to read to you, okay? UTEP, Colorado at home, Northern Iowa at home, Illinois at home, at Purdue, Rutgers at home. Rutgers coming to town.
Rutgers.
Then they're off, okay, Hutton? They're going to be favored in all those games. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-0. They should be 6-0.
They should be Ole Miss.
They should be 6-0 going into the bye week on October 12th. Then they come out of the bye week, and you think, oh, boy, it's going to get real tough coming out of that bye week. They had to have taken a bye week to get ready for some big opponent. They go
Ohio
to mighty Bloomington, Indiana to face the Indiana Hoosiers, who's starting over with a new coach. They're 7-0. I think they're going to be 7-0 going to Ohio State. They're going to get likely boat raced by the Buckeyes in Columbus, but that's 1 loss. Then they get UCLA at home. Should be a win. They get another off week.
Yep.
They go to USC, who, as we have seen before, under Lincoln Riley, can be some paper champions. That could be a winnable game.
Yes.
If Dylan Raiola's got things rolling, and there's still a top 10 defense with all those guys returning from a year ago. Again, 5-7.
Chad.
Not good, but 5 of the 7 losses by 1 score.
What you're setting up here is they're going to USC with the college football playoff in view. Is what you're setting up.
I think they're going to USC at 8-1, coming off a bye week.
Okay.
8-1. At USC, let's say they even lose that. Let's say they lose one of these two, at USC or at Iowa, both ranked barely, 23rd and 25th. Okay? Then they beat Wisconsin at home. They're 10-2. They are a 10-2 Big Ten team with, while the metrics aren't going to be great because they would not have beaten a really good team on their schedule. They've beaten some pretty good teams and lost to the great teams on their schedule. That's good enough for the playoff. That's good enough to be in the top 12. So Nebraska, yes, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, that's a sleeper for me to possibly break into the top 10 or the college football playoff. Another one to watch.
And Matt Rule has a tendency, does he not, in year 2 in college football?
There's always if you are a great coach, across the board, every great coach in college football the last 20 years, 90% of them in year 2, it's a liftoff. You know, year 2 was Nick Saban going to the SEC championship game in 2008. 2009 was him winning his first national title at Alabama in year 3. Right? If you look at all those guys, Kirby Smart took off in year 2. Great coaches tend to take off in year 2.
And Rule did that at Baylor.
Urban Meyer won the national title in year 2 at Florida. '05 was his first year at Florida. '06, they win the national title. Yeah, Matt Rule at Baylor, good example. I think Rule has a chance with this schedule and with a 5-star quarterback and with what should be a really good defense to go 9-3 or 10-2. And if they're 10-2, I think they're going to the playoff. So that's one to watch. West Virginia is another one. Garrett Green, their quarterback, terrific player. Dual threat, can do a little bit of everything. He leads an offense that has 8 returning starters. 4 of their 5 offensive linemen are back. They got big-time transfers at wide receiver from Oklahoma State and Mississippi State. And this may be the sleeper matchup of the entire first week of college football. But keep a close eye on West Virginia's first opponent. They host Penn State in week 1. They are a 12-point underdog at home against the Nittany Lions. If West Virginia can win that game, and by the way, I'm about to flip this to Penn State on the other side of this. If West Virginia can win that game, their schedule is not easy. It is a difficult Big 12 schedule. But if they can win that game, they got a chance to do some things. In the Big 12, Hutton, they go to Oklahoma State and to Arizona, both very tough. But they get home games against the other good teams in the conference. Kansas, Iowa State, Kansas State. They have to come to Morgantown. This is a team that could find themselves at 9-3 with a chance to win that conference, 10-2 with a chance to win that conference in a conference championship game. I think West Virginia's one completely outside the top 25, like Nebraska, that could find themselves in the college football playoff.
Well,
years in.
Their gauntlet is really on their 2 road games that you mentioned, Oklahoma State and Arizona, but they're coming off of games against quality opponents. They're hosting Kansas prior to Oklahoma State on the road, and then they're hosting Kansas State prior to heading to Arizona, which is another sneaky good game.
So
that's not the Nebraska schedule. To point out the differences here.
No, this is way tougher.
I think West Virginia's more spoiler, going to your point for week 1 against Penn State.
Now, Nebraska fans are going to argue with what I said about their schedule being that easy because they have lost to these teams that they're going to be playing in recent memory. So, you know, it doesn't when you say easy to them, they're like, what are you talking about easy? We can't even beat these teams most years.
To your subject matter here. And
but their Big Ten opponents to start are Illinois, at Purdue, Rutgers, at Indiana.
Yeah.
That's as easy as you can get for this year's Big Ten. Outside of Michigan State, who's going to be really bad.
Yeah, I mean,
I think this year that's as easy as you can get.
It's the conference equivalent of what Ole Miss is facing the SEC.
Yeah,
it's not an easy schedule per se for your average college football season.
But
it's set up well for Ole Miss. Chad, by the way,
there's a strong chance they're going to go into that weekend before Halloween undefeated.
Matt Rule, so he took Temple to 4-game improvements in his second and third seasons, each of those. And then he went from 1 win in his first year at Baylor to 11 wins in his third year. So this is right in his wheelhouse here.
Look out. And they've got a lot of that defense coming back that was so good a year ago. I'm telling you, Nebraska, they've improved. Certainly at quarterback they've improved. But because of their schedule, I think they got a good chance to be one of those spoiler-type teams. Let's get to the teams that can be on the other side of things. Those in the top 10 that maybe aren't going to be all they panned out to be. Hutton, trivia question for you. Who was the highest scoring team in the Big Ten a year ago? Just points per game, highest scoring team.
Okay, so
give me the obvious that
Iowa.
You would think.
It's not Iowa.
Not Iowa. Yeah, they're off the board.
So it's not Ohio State or Michigan.
Not Ohio State or Michigan.
Was it Penn State?
It is Penn State, Hutton. You are correct. Penn State was the highest scoring team in the Big Ten, and they fired their offensive coordinator, Mike Yurcich. Okay, they bring in the guy from Kansas, Andy Kotelnicki, is their new offensive coordinator. Kansas's offense under Lance Leipold is a thing of beauty. It is complex. It is different. There's a ton of RPO. There's a lot of different things going on with that.
That's a big hire for them.
Drew Aller in that offense could be a lot of fun to watch. I'm not down on Penn State. Okay, I think there's a lot to like about Penn State and what they have coming back. I'll also say with Penn State, they're only returning 5 players on offense. They're only returning 6 players on defense. They've got a new offensive coordinator running what could be a difficult system to transfer to in year 1. To have that early buy-in and early understanding of the concepts of what Andy Kotelnicki once at Penn State. James Franklin's 4-16 versus Ohio State and Michigan. James Franklin is 3-17 against top 10 teams over his tenure. I mentioned that tough game that's being a little bit overlooked at West Virginia in week 1. By the way, that is the big noon kickoff game, the opening week. 11 a.m. Central Time, big noon kickoff. They go to USC. They go to Wisconsin. They get Ohio State at home. They go to Minnesota. Sneaky tough game against Maryland to end the year. I think it's hard for me, Hutton, to sit here and say they're not going to go 10-2 with that schedule. But can I see a route to 9-3 or 8-4? Yeah, and that's a disappointment. That would be a disappointment for this team to not finish in the playoff, but to finish somewhere in the 20s nationally. I could see that with Penn State. So that's one to watch. The other one to me is Texas. And I'm picking Texas to go to the SEC championship game. I think they're really good. Texas has also only been really good for one season of the last 14. I think they've had one good year. It was last year. And a lot of what we do in preseason rankings is we look at what the team did last year, and then we try to project to the next year, which can be fool's gold at times. I don't buy into the motivation game with all things that, oh, boy, this team's really going to be motivated to beat this team, so they're going to make it happen in this game next year. But it can play a factor. Motivation is strong on Texas's schedule. I mean strong. Hutton, they're going to play Oklahoma, always strong motivation. And a lot of times the underdog will win that game.
Look at these home games.
They did a year ago, by the way. Oklahoma was the underdog, won that game in the Red River Shootout. At Arkansas, strong motivation for Arkansas. Old Southwest Conference rivals. They're going on the road to Arkansas. At A&M, we know about the history with A&M in Texas. Strong motivation in that game. And that's on top of going to Ann Arbor to play the defending national champions and facing Georgia, who is the preseason #1 overall team at home. I like Texas. I like what they're bringing back. They lost 2 of their top running backs already. They're down to 3 scholarship running backs before the season kicks off.
Oh, but they're sneaky good in a way too, because I think a lot of people are going to sleep on the fact that, or not sleep on the fact, they're going to overemphasize their injuries at running back. But the dude that's back had a massive yards in the return game a year ago.
Yeah,
for them, and he played a factor in the college football playoff at running back.
Well, and so they lose Jonathan Brooks, I think was the running back a year ago, to the NFL. And then they lose 2 of those guys. Yeah, and one other thing on Texas, who, again, I think is very talented, and I've got them going to the SEC championship. But there are a lot of highly motivated teams on their schedule wanting to prove them wrong. And there is a high likelihood, if anything looks remotely off with Quinn Ewers, that you could have an uncomfortable quarterback controversy in Austin.
That's happening.
Because we know who's waiting.
That's happening.
Arch Manning is right there. And whether you want to insulate everything and make it this or that, the community around Texas is going to be all about Arch. That locker room, that could start to happen within the locker room also. Then if Arch Manning comes in and he's not great, he's kind of hit or miss, then there's this other faction of the locker room that could be behind Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers was good a year ago, but if things don't look great, they have to look perfect. And I'm talking about perfect when they go to Ann Arbor, Michigan. If they don't look perfect in a tough game, in a tough environment, there's going to be quarterback controversy, which could lead to some bad things too.
And
it's
then
just 2 to watch.
Sark getting the big extension, the big money. Look, everybody's getting paid in college football nowadays, but again, the pressure's on. If not for their move to the SEC, this would be championship or bust material.
Yeah. Hey,
I'm sure fans in Austin feel that way anyway with the hype and the following that they have. But they would be on a very short list of programs that if you don't win the national title in 2024-25, it was a failure.
Yeah.
And instead, it's about getting a win in the college football playoff because of the SEC gauntlet they're going to be in.
Hutton, I feel great about.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel great about Nebraska and West Virginia and them being sleepers. I don't feel great about Penn State or Texas. Just in the top 10, if I had to point to someone
of those 2,
let me give you a third outlier. One that was right on the outside of who I would predict to be a failure based on preseason expectation. The top 10, Ole Miss.
Oh, but yes.
Only because
We've seen this before.
Lane Kiffin, I think, is really good when he's playing the underdog. When he can be sort of the outside of the cool kids club, taking little pot shots on Twitter. No one's expecting much of us. Come to the SIP, and we're going to do big things here. But when you get crowned in the preseason, and they have been crowned, and Missouri too, they have been crowned as preseason darlings in the SEC. Schedule lines up perfectly. Veteran quarterback, veterans around them, great transfers coming in. There's a possibility for big-time disappointment. I really like this Ole Miss roster. So I didn't go with them, but I would put them on that list of, if I'm having to go in order of who's going to let down this year based on very high expectations, I would go Texas 1, Penn State 2. In that top 10 of the AP top 10, Texas 1, Penn State 2, Ole Miss 3.
See, I think you also have to throw in the expectations of which. I think there are two programs that have championship or bust mentalities right now.
Ohio State
and Georgia. That's it to me. And Georgia's schedule, I think they have to be included in this conversation.
I think Georgia, though, you're right, but just when you look at it personally from the coach's perspective, because he won the back-to-back titles, it's not nearly as dire as Ryan Day.
No.
Who's lost to his bitter rival.
Totally agree.
Now, too many times in a row for Ohio State fans' liking, and hasn't won the big one.
Yeah, and then there's Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. They're the SEC's version for me of Penn State in the Big Ten, with James Franklin and the Nittany Lions. Because 2 years ago I was high on Penn State and I was high on Ole Miss. And then what happened whenever they actually had a chance to put up or shut up? Ole Miss is down 28-0 at halftime in Tuscaloosa.
They shut up. They didn't put up.
And I think the other factor here is of two of the teams you're bringing up. You bring up Ole Miss and Texas. The common thread in all that is Georgia. Georgia's on both of their schedules. It's listed as the toughest opponent, not just because they're Georgia.
Georgia goes to both those teams.
Yes, yeah. So I think if they're going to be and play the factor that meets expectations, speaking of Texas and Ole Miss, it's going to come with a win over Georgia that knocks them down a peg. But you're right, as far as like the pressure to win and get over the hump, Kirby Smart's not on that list at all.
No, but for Ole Miss purposes and Lane Kiffin, not that Lane Kiffin's under any pressure or anything like that. No hot seat talk, none of that. But this is a year where if you're an Ole Miss fan, you're thinking, if not now, then when?
Yeah.
When are we ever going to be in Atlanta?
He's never won at the biggest level.
They've never played in Atlanta for the SEC title. When are we ever going to be in that championship game? Now Texas and Oklahoma are coming in, and who the hell knows who's coming in next? Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, whoever. I mean, when is Ole Miss going to be stacked like this with a veteran team?
Yeah. And
Lane Kiffin as the head coach again.
Well, with
so
this
schedule. There is some finality to it, I think, with Ole Miss fans. And they're preseason 6th in the country. It's an absolute disappointment if they're not in the playoff. If they're not top 12, that's a huge disappointment to Ole Miss fans. That's a good place to be if you're an Ole Miss fan. That you're going to be terribly disappointed if your team's not playing in the college football playoff, but they will be.
And Ole Miss's schedule, it's a layup. It is.
For SEC purposes, it is, yes.
And they're playing two spoilers on everyone's schedule if you have them, LSU and Oklahoma. I mean, they're a lot like the West Virginia discussion. LSU threw a nail in Ole Miss's plans last year.
You just reminded me about LSU USC opening weekend on Sunday, too.
Yes.
Another one I'm really excited to watch. I'm excited for any football. Let's bring it on. I'll be watching 11 a.m. Central Time, that game in Ireland on Saturday. I'm ready to go.
The Pete. ESPN's top college football broadcasts on ABC. ABC, ESPN, of course, with the SEC. The top broadcast teams are back, and they're going to rotate for that 3:30 Eastern kickoff on ABC. So it's not going to always be the same broadcast teams that you might find on NBC or Fox with the Big Ten. The rotating window includes Fowler and Herbstreit. You've got Sean McDonough and Greg McElroy and Joe Tessitore and Jesse Palmer. And it will rotate week to week. For instance, Tessitore and Palmer, they have Florida and Miami. That's the 3:30 kickoff in week 1 on the 31st. Sean McDonough and Greg McElroy, they'll be in Atlanta for Georgia and Clemson Crazy to think that Georgia and Clemson is an 11 a.m. Central kickoff in week 1 of college football. And then the night game is A&M against Notre Dame, and that's Fowler Herbstreit.
Just the talk of this.
I know, I love it.
Just has me
Can't complain about
tingly
it.
all over.
Can't complain
just thinking
about it.
about it.